Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jane Yu. I am a wedding and event planner based in Los Angeles. I own a company called UNS Events. And on my channel, I talk about all things wedding planning, some tips and tricks to plan your own wedding and event, and just some real behind the scenes stories about weddings that I've worked on. If you're watching today's video, you might have seen the last one I made about your wedding planning mindset. And this is what to do before you even get started in the mechanics of it. You want to get your mind right. You want to talk to your partner. You want to talk to your families. You want to make sure everyone's on the same page about what's going on and what steps you're going to take to move forward. Otherwise, things are going to get really stressful really quickly and chaotic as well, because there's going to be so many different people chiming in. So if you kind of set the tone from the beginning, then your process to come will be much better. Hopefully you and your partner have been talking to each other just about both the fun things and the hard things. I know it's not always an easy conversation to have, but better to get these things out of the way just to make sure that whatever you're doing next is going to be a lot easier. Now for the next step, this is where I would start, is narrowing down your date. This is really going to depend on when your ideal venues are available as well, but you want to narrow down the season, which part of the year, which month that you would ideally like to have your wedding. You also want to consider, am I okay with having my wedding on a Friday or perhaps a Sunday if budget is an issue and that will help the budget? Or if your favorite venue is not available on a Saturday, are you okay going with a Friday or a Sunday? These are all questions that you should just think about. You don't have to have the answer right away, but these are some things that you should consider while choosing or selecting when you want to do your wedding. If you're pretty open-minded, I would say that the most popular months, just from experience, for getting married is May and June, and September, October, a little bit in November. That's probably when the weather is the best. It's not too hot in the summer. I think if you're in cities like Seattle or the Midwest, summer might be beautiful actually, so that might be the best. But the East Coast might be a little, you don't know when it's gonna rain, or it's like way too humid to be outside and things like that. So obviously it depends where you are. But for LA and New York, which I know very well, May, June, and September, October are very popular months. That's not to say people don't get married all other months of the year, because they definitely do. But especially on the East Coast, a lot of venues offer off-peak pricing, so it's less expensive when it's on off-peak months that are not, it's usually May through June or September and October. It really depends on the venue. There's no one size fits all approach. So you just have to ask if they have off-peak pricing. Some places will just offer the same price all year, it doesn't matter. So that's just something to think about as well. Now, when you're choosing the month for your, or season for your wedding, you also want to consider if you're going to have any outdoor elements. So some people really want an outdoor ceremony, then of course you want the weather to be as good as possible. If you're ambivalent about that and having everything indoor is okay, then that's also fine for you to consider. So you can just have an indoor ceremony, cocktail hour, and reception. So those are just some things that you want to keep in the back of your mind while you're researching venues. Additionally, we can sort of get into the rain backup plans as we get into the more details of the venue selections, but weather is a pretty big component, especially in places where there's seasonal climates. In Los Angeles, it's not as important because, you know, the chance of rain is much lower than some other cities, but you never know, because last year, 2023, we got so much rain, and I think a lot of people probably weren't prepared for that. Another thing you want to consider about your date is you want to make sure your key people are going to be there. So whether it's your wedding party or your parents or other close friends you consider family, maybe it's your mentor that you want to make sure is there, I would definitely float your top dates to them to make sure that they're available on those weekends. I definitely was bummed when certain people couldn't come to our wedding because of the date, even though it was 6 months in advance. Sometimes they have things planned. So if you're planning a year out, I would definitely reach out to those key people. I'm assuming that group is pretty small, to make sure that they can attend so that you're not surprised by their declines later. I would also consider the demographic of your group. Just think about the arrangements they might have to make. And this is really if you want certain people, or if you understand like what your group is going to be like, what the makeup of your guests are, and you're trying to be as considerate as possible. So for instance, one of my clients, they were really considerate of their guests because they were all traveling from Northern California to LA, which isn't a long trip, but they took into consideration that all of their friends had kids and had to arrange for childcare. And Friday was just out of the question because then they would have to arrange for an extra day of childcare, whereas on the weekend they might have a family member available to take care of their kids and they would only have to do one night. They really took that into consideration because they wanted as many of their friends to be able to come and be able to enjoy a night away from their kids at an adult only celebration as much as possible. And I thought that was really, really sweet. And that's why I'm including this part in the video, because I do think that's very important. Now, things to consider when you're making your venue list. I think you have to consider, do you want everything to be at one place? It really narrows it down a little bit if you're only going to have your reception somewhere and then you want your ceremony elsewhere. You may have more options available to you actually if you're going to do it that way. So that's one question I would definitely ask. What kind of style are you looking for? If you don't really know, it's okay, but I think it's good to have like a really general idea of what you really don't like. So for instance, if you hate industrial blank spaces, then cool. Like you don't have to look at any warehouse type of spaces. If you don't like the, California Spanish architecture, then cool, you can rule out all of those places, which, is a decent amount of spaces in Los Angeles and Southern California. So I think it's good to just like think through it. You and your partner might have different ideas for aesthetic. After going through what you like, what you don't like, you might come to like a pretty good baseline of what is acceptable for the two of you. Also, what kind of space do you think you'll want? Should it be a blank space, or do you want it to come with all the tables and chairs and a bunch of amenities? Blank space is cool because you can customize it to your liking, but it will probably be a little bit more expensive and definitely take a lot more planning. But if you go with a hotel, let's say, or even a restaurant space, like a private space at a restaurant, that is going to be a little bit more of a turnkey situation because food and beverage and furniture will all be included. You will have also the service charges and taxes built in to that already, right? And so it might be a little bit more expensive potentially, or it could really be a similar cost as building out a blank space, just depending on what you find. Now, hotels these days, obviously there's such a wide range of them in terms of decor and aesthetic. I think I would figure out what kind of aesthetic you want first before deciding if you want to do something like a hospitality space or like a completely blank event space that you'll have to build out. If you are looking at a blank space, I would definitely consider having a planner because there's a lot of thought that goes into a blank space. The venues, depending on the venue, can give you a pretty good idea of what other couples have done and all of that, but having a planner would really cut out a lot of the back and forth thinking and decision making that you'd have to make. Or you can also do wedding consultation, which I offer, and I did make a video about what that entails. These are just some things to think about when you're thinking about, do I want a ballroom space or do I want a hotel? Like what kind of service do I want? What kind of food do I want? How much control do I want over all of the vendors that I bring in, etc. So that's kind of the first step into actually planning the wedding, is thinking through when you're gonna do it, what type of venue you're going to have. And these are just some things to think about before you even get into it, because I don't know if I mentioned this before, but wedding planning is meant to be done in chunks. And that's why most people do it in about a year average, right? Or 8 months to a year. If it's any less than that, it can feel really chaotic because it's not your full-time job. It's not a couple's full-time job to be planning this wedding. If you have that capacity, great, then you could do it like within 3 months. I don't think it's ideal for anybody. Even as a planner, because you have to juggle multiple clients, you want that sort of time to be able to thoughtfully plan everything, to think through every detail, to allow for the couple to really make the decisions, make informed decisions as much as possible, and not just rush into things because you don't have time to do it anymore. It takes about, I would say, 200 to 300 plus hours to plan a wedding between all the calls, the research, the site visits, etc. If you break that down into a 40-hour week, that's 5 to 7.5 plus full-time working weeks. So if you take that into context, that's why you really want to spread it out over a month. And so I'm going to do these videos in a similar type of manner where I'm taking things piece by piece, taking you through the actual motions, the way I would do it, and the way I would work with the client if they were completely starting from scratch. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this is the start of a great wedding planning journey for you, and I can't wait to make the next few videos. Next time, I'm going to be talking about venue selections and what to look out for and what questions to ask when searching for your venue. There's a lot that goes into that, and I was actually going to put it in this one, but I thought it was going to be a little bit too much information at once, so I'm splitting it up into 2 different videos. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please hit that like button if you liked what you saw, and hit that subscribe button for more content, and I can't wait to see you back in here next time. I don't know why I'm sweating right now, but probably shouldn't have worn this turtleneck. It was a warm day today. In other news, why is the lighting so yellow? I have to get this right. My place is a mess right now, and I'm not gonna show you because it's embarrassing, but I got back from my trip a week ago and I haven't unpacked, but I was sick for the last few days. So I need to unpack completely. I had to do a ton of returns because I bought all this stuff for a photo shoot that I did. Place is getting into order, but I'm also sweating because I don't know why I wore this shirt when it was a warm day today. But I hope you're doing well, and this is, I guess, an epilogue to this video for whatever reason. Thank you for making it to this part of the video if you have.